10 years, and it's just now 5 years. So I think in the next few years, I hope to see an increase. We're pretty low for sugar anyways. We're like 1.4 to 1.6 throughout the season is our average. So I hope to get that up a little bit, but time will tell.
So we're officially live. I didn't hit go live. So none of that made it. We got to do it all over again.
Oh,
nice.
That's okay. We had a rehearsal. So now we've got, 3 people watching.
Nice.
I'm gonna have to I tell you what, I'm gonna have to mute you, Kevin, or in between talking. If you mute yourself, that'll work. So for those of us, we got 6 people on. So for those of you that are just joining, we had a great conversation, and I never clicked go live. So we are 19. I got excited. I want to talk to Peter about his book. And sorry about that. So people are going to start making comments. That's my bad. But we got a dress rehearsal. Whoever gets a dress rehearsal.
That's right.
So Peter's got a book out. I was on vacation for the first time in 6 years. I like to read my Google News feed. And right up comes all the Maple news stories. And there's Wall Street Journal. And I'm looking at this Peter Gregg. I go, what? He's got a book out. So I downloaded it. Actually, what I did is I was able to I like to read everything on my phone. And it allowed me to download a sample. And as soon as I had the map, and then I read a bunch of pages, and I'm like, I'm just going to get this book. I can't not read a maple syrup farmer's take on a maple season. And I felt like I was there. That's the gist of it. So anybody who's watching, make sure you make a comment that you can hear us. I screwed up. I forgot to hit go live, so we get another shot at it here. So everything you wanted to say before, Peter, that you didn't get to, you get to now.
Thanks.
And then we've got Kevin on. I like to democratize information. So Kevin actually sent me a text and goes, why haven't you done a live in a while? I'm like, I don't know, man. So this wouldn't be happening tonight if Kevin didn't send me a text. And then I sent a text to a few people. I'm like, oh, this would be a good conversation. So Peter, tell us about the book. Tell us what's going on and kind of introduce it to everybody, because I don't think everybody on the YouTube platform does the Facebook platform. So kind of explain what's going on.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity, Nate. It's cool to be on here with you. This is the book. It's called The Sugar Rush, and it's kind of a chronicle of my 2022 maple season. And it was kind of my attempt that year to try to hit that kind of elusive benchmark of 5 pounds of syrup per tap. So, and the kind of the narrative drive of the book is me trying to get there. I have been making syrup for a while, but I'm not a natural born farmer like you are, or like Kevin is. I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis. So this is kind of a fish out of water story, and I'm the fish, so I'm trying to, match wits, so to speak, hold my head up high, and match up with the Vermonters in my neighborhood. I'm right on the New York-Vermont border, and try to equal what they do, that 5 pounds per tap benchmark. And so it kind of turns into a comedy from there. A lot of things go wrong, but I recruit my best buddy to help me out. And a lot of my neighbor sugar makers who definitely know what they're doing help me out. And, but through it all, I try to tell the whole maple story about what we're doing out here and how hard it is and how hard we work to make this kind of quality, delightful product. I mean, that's what we're making, is a product that delights people, right? And, and we work really hard to do it. So I try to put the reader in my boots for a season. And so that's the gist of the book.
And like a actor or professional athlete, you have an agent. You have an agent. You have a literary agent, which I didn't know that was a thing. You need somebody who knows. You have to have somebody who knows the people, or they speak publisher, right? So that's their job.
Yeah, I mean, how
Explain
the
that for
story
us.
of the book is opposed to what the story in the book, the story of how the book kind of came to be is, I started just took out a yellow legal pad, and I don't know, I was just inspired in kind of December of 21, I guess it was, and I just started writing. And then I said, I'm going to just chronicle my whole maple season. Every little thing that happens, mostly things go wrong, all the people that come into my world. I have a lot of other sugar makers that stop by and help me out because, I didn't grow up making syrup. I come from the suburbs of Minneapolis. I'm a flatlander. That's what they call guys like me. All right. So I need a lot of help. So I try to tell their stories too. And I incorporate a lot of humor. I try to anyway, and it kind of turns into a buddy movie, almost in a way like Smokey and the Bandit. If Smokey and the Bandit was a book about maple syrup, this is the book it would be. It's kind of what I was going for.
Well, I just felt like it's bros, making syrup. I did this with my brother-in-law, like my cousins, my brother-in-law, like he's my wingman. And
nice.
my cousin Tanya, her husband Larry, like we caught the sugar house roof on fire probably like year 2. Like the whole stories that I have, and it was just a bunch of people working really hard for no pay. Like we weren't getting anything out of it other than the joy of making this product. So I feel like I'm in the book, just like the sugar season, the Douglas Why Not,
yes.
Chronicle of Bruce Bascom, and then when I'm reading about Irv Gingrich, I'm like, this is amazing. Like I feel like I'm there in the book. That's what I got excited. So that's why I purchased it, and I saw the map. It felt like the old Lord of the Rings that I found. My dad had the old Hobbit and Lord of the Rings when I was in grade school, and had the map written out. Was it Misty Mountain?
Yes.
Mordor.
Yes, I have a map. I have a lot of illustrations. We could probably all write a book about maple syrup, couldn't we? I just happened to put it down on paper. And like you mentioned before, I got a literary agent once I was done, and I was lucky to have that happen and then kind of enter the world of publishing. She sold it to one of those New York publishers, and now it's out there for the world to enjoy, hopefully. So we'll see how we do.
Would you say the hardest thing is starting, right? Just deciding to start.
Yes. It takes, it is. It was, kind of a long time coming. I mean, I'm a writer by trade, really. I mean, I published the Maple News as you know, and I've been an editor for the Maple News for 24 years. And, so I've written a lot about maple syrup. I've probably visited 1,000 sugar houses. I make syrup myself, and I've been writing about maple for, 2.5 decades. So, so I have writing ability, I guess you could say, but just sit down and put 280 pages together, that was a big undertaking, but it was very satisfying once it was done, for sure. I loved the whole process, and it turned out to be actually a lot of fun. So, and I'm having fun promoting it, but it's just a wonderful industry we're all a part of, and I was excited to have the opportunity to share that story with the world, so to speak, just like you are now with this video.
Well, one of the things, like when I'm talking to you, Peter, I can always tell, like, if you ever talk to somebody where English is their second language, sometimes it goes through a filter, right? It goes through like whatever their primary language is. They have to convert it. They say you have to like speak that language a lot before you start thinking, and instead of doing the conversion. But when I'm talking to you, I can tell it gets filtered through journalism. Like there's this language, so everything's like you're thinking in terms of probably whatever formal training or informal training you have, but I can see the wheels are always turning. You're converting it from whatever language you're hearing to how can I make this a piece? Like that's how every time I'm talking to you, I feel like Peter's converting this to journalism speak. That's what it's.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's really my job is to kind of take, what we're doing in maple is, there's some complication to it. I mean, it takes a little bit of effort to explain it to a layman, so to speak, and that's what I try to do in the book, is just explain in kind of simple terms all the stuff that we're going through. I try to put the reader in my boots for a season, and then I add some humor in there too, and then certainly a story. I mean, it's just boring if you just read about all this stuff without a story involved. And so the story is me trying to, match wits with all the Vermonters around me, and we'll see how I do. You got to read the book to find out, but that's the kind of the narrative drive, they call it, of the book.
Well, Peter, I appreciate you jumping on. Congratulations.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome. Kevin, you have any questions for Peter here?
I don't think I have any questions at this time. I think I need to pick up a copy of the book. That's for sure.
Thank you. Yep. You can go, they got it on Amazon, of course, and then on Walmart. Walmart actually has the best price online. So, if you want to order it from there, and then you can go to the library and read it for free too. Most of the libraries have them to have the copy as well.
And I don't think, did we mention how well it's doing? I forgot if I clicked go live before or after you mentioned, but it's doing really well. It said it's selling like hotcakes is what they said.
Yeah, selling like hotcakes. Yeah, the publisher told me this week it's like their best of the quarter or something like that so far. So it's cruising right along. I was a little nervous, releasing a maple syrup book in July. I kind of said, are you sure that's when you want to put it out? But they said that's when people are reading books, in the summer, just like you did, Nate. You went to the beach or wherever you went on vacation and took a book with you. That's what a lot of people do. So they know what they're doing. And, and I expect to sell through the fall and into the winter where people get really excited about maple. And, we'll see how we do from there.
Well, Peter, thank you. I appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah.
You're welcome to stay on if you want.
I'll stay on and watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about who knows what. I wrote down a little bit of a itinerary, but I just got back from vacation. First vacation in 6 years, and I went to Michigan because it was my brother, my sister, parents. Haven't been on a vacation with my 3 boys. It's been 6 years, and the first 2 days I didn't even know what to do. But we went to Lake Michigan, and I didn't even realize this. Michigan has more coastline than every state but one, Alaska. And if you took the coastline of Michigan, it would go from Maine all the way to the tip of Florida. That's how much coastline it has. So some people call it the middle coast, which I thought was interesting. So I just loved it. I had never been to any of these towns along Lake Michigan, and it's just a lot of summer activity, boating, the fruit that is produced in that area. Like I had no idea. I'm an Ohio boy. Like we were taught you can't even say the word Michigan growing up. Like it's not even, let alone go visit. But I kind of been falling in love with the state and seeing we do a lot in maple. In the Michigan area. It was just kind of cool. Got to jump in Lake Michigan. On the way back, put my feet in Huron. So I've been in Erie, Michigan, Huron. Haven't done Superior or Ontario yet. So I got to hit those maybe next summer. But it was fun. I got to visit some sugar makers, and hopefully I'll be able to go back in 4 to 6 weeks and maybe do an episode with a sugar maker up there. And we went to Traverse City, which I always wanted to do the whole cherry. It was everything I'd hoped for. We went to this place called the Cherry Hut, and it was everything I hoped for. They had cherry pie to die for. Like I was like, this was what I was hoping Traverse City was like, and it was pretty cool. So I don't know, you guys, I don't know what you did this summer, but that was like, I'm still coming down off of this vacation. I feel like rested. I haven't done anything like this. It's crazy. How do you go 6 years without taking a break? Who knows?
We're actually going on our first vacation in like 4 or 5 years too, at the end of this month to Colorado and Wyoming.
No kidding. You flying or driving?
We're flying. We're going out for like 4 or 5 days. We're going to Denver, Estes Park, and Cheyenne, Wyoming.
I've done a layover in Denver, but I've never done Colorado.
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half from, I think, Denver to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And there's a bunch of small towns in between. So it's our first vacation. Just me and my wife are going. The kids are staying home. So it's going to be kind of nice, relaxing.
I had 3 boys. Like I got 17, 15, 11. And then my brother and sister, there's a bunch of them like at the bottom, like they're ankle biters all the way up to like 6, 7 years old. And like there's diapers. Like I haven't seen diapers in a long time. But it was a blast. I wanted to go to Maine, and I was just outvoted. Like my brother's like, no, we're going to Michigan. My sister got this Airbnb, and I enjoyed it. They crushed it. It was just a good time.
I have a question.
You
were in Traverse City or Traverse City?
Traverse.
There's a sugar maker there that actually fires his evaporator with cherry pits.
Really?
Yeah. I was wondering maybe if you saw him.
No, I would love. That's an ideal. Like, who does that?
This guy, he goes around to all the cherry. Or what's his name? Joe Woods, I believe his name is. And he goes around and visits all the cherry orchards where you were in Traverse City. And I guess just collects a bunch of cherry pits, and he fires his evaporator with cherry. I was like, how do they burn hot?
That's unique.
Like, I couldn't believe how hot they burn. I was like, wow, all right. So the only time I had ever heard that one. Say that again.
It's got to be. It's the cherry capital. That's what they call themselves, the cherry capital. In fact, my wife wanted to go see a baseball game. I think they were called the Pit Spitters. That was the name of the team, the Pit Spitters. I was like, that's pretty clever. We just didn't get out to to see the baseball game, but yeah, I'd never been to Traverse City. I saw we took an Uber to a restaurant, and the guy was telling us that they have these Chinook salmon, and the world record or the record now in Lake Michigan is like 46 pounds. 46 pounds. And he's like, yeah, I can go out right now, and I guarantee you a couple hours I'll have a 22 pounder, and I'm just like, man, I don't even fish, and I want to do that. He's like, one fish, you'll fill a 1 gallon bag with meat, like that, just one. And I'm just like, wow. Like, it made me want to just start fishing and living off of salmon. But it was beautiful. Like the whole thing. So yeah, growing up as an Ohio boy, they don't even let you say the word Michigan. They almost took the letter M out of the alphabet growing up in Ohio. They didn't even want the letter M. But yeah, I've just been loving my time in Michigan here recently. We send trucks a couple times a month. We have a truck going up I-75. So just interesting, just the whole maple culture. And they're kind of in a tough spot, like geographically. There isn't really a packer in Michigan. So their syrup either has to go west or out east, and there's no one really, there's a lot of larger or producers that are organic, they're newer equipment, and they're coming up, their tap counts are growing, and they just that market really isn't being served from a bulk standpoint. But one of the things I was, because you're driving 7-8 hours, I listen to a lot of YouTube people I like, and I was listening about, there's 2 types of people, and you see this in the agricultural communities. There are 2 types of people with regards to whether you believe there's a limited amount of success that, if somebody's out there is successful, that means someone's losing. And there's a term for that. It's called zero-sum fallacy. It's actually a fallacy. And then there are people that have abundance mindset. That means that just because somebody's successful doesn't mean that another person can't. And it's so common. You think about, like, until you really looked at yourself and say, am I an abundance mindset person, or do I think there's a limited amount of success in the world? So somewhere out there, if someone's successful, it means that somewhere out there someone's not. And that's a fallacy. It's just not even true. And you can start as you, I guess, in this 20-year journey of going through this, you can kind of tell who wants everybody to be successful and who's a little worried that if someone's success goes too much, that they kind of want to bring you down because somehow that's going to make the world. Now, this is like a philosophical discussion. I mean, I think about this a lot because I can tell typically if I go, hey, you want to come on my channel and do a live stream? If they're instantly worried about what I'll get out of it, that's a zero-sum fallacy mindset. Instead of, no, I want you to be successful. I hope you crush it. There's no limit to any of our success. It's not limited, but yet we do this to ourselves. And, you know, in the last like 4 or 5 years of just growing the business, you end up getting to a point where even friends, dear friends, are like, yeah, Nate, like Nate's just getting too big for us now or something like that. And it's like, it hurts. Like it hurts because it's true. You have to finally go, yeah, you know, I can't, what got me here won't get me there. And all these, and I'm so loyal. I want to keep all of these customers that got me here. And then eventually what happens is that people are like, they think they can somehow limit your success, like, or have control over it. Or I love the people that jump on YouTube and hit the thumbs down. Like, that's going to hurt. Like, actually, it does the opposite. I don't want to tell anybody that. Like, don't tell people that when you have a negative interaction on YouTube, it still helps the algorithms. Like, you don't want them to know because it's interesting, right? But yeah, I think about these philosophies because I see it. And then you can kind of tell as you're interacting with farmers, if anybody's worried about what you're going to get out of something, that's that zero-sum fallacy that it's got to level out. It's a scale. I don't know. This is definitely deeper philosophical discussions because I see it. You see it everywhere. You see it not just in the farming and ag community, offices. You know, somebody's getting compliments from the boss and, you know, everybody else got to knock them down a few pegs. Like, that's the zero-sum fallacy coming through. And you really have to ask yourself, do I think that there's a limited amount of success, a limited amount of money? I don't care, resource, whatever resource you think it is, a limited amount of maple trees. Like, you have to think about it in the infinite standpoint. There's an infinite amount of success. So I don't know. It was something that I just been thinking about a lot. I don't know. Do you guys ever think about this? Do you ever see it? Do you ever experience it? Do you ever, like, business ownership? You know, I want everybody's business to be successful. Even my competitors. Why would I want somebody's business to fail? That, like, because I'm going to win? No, no, it's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I think I used to be like that quite a bit too. I used to think that like there's only so much bourbon barrel syrup that could be sold in a year, and now, like, look at us. Our places are what, 30 minutes from each other, and
Yeah.
I mean, we both ship stuff all over. We both supply places. We both sell tons and tons of product. And
Right,
like,
I know.
some of the people I was competing against at like shows, now we're like supplying them because like the better product that they have to sell, the more product that we can make. So like we figured out our aging technique or whatever, and people love it. So I might as well supply them too and make them do better, because if they sell, 100 more gallons a year and buy it off of us, that works out for me and for them.
Yeah, at this point, I think we're making barrel-aged syrup for about 30 different farmers. And good. I don't, like, it's just easier. Like, I get bourbon barrels in the thousands. And, when you're getting bourbon barrels by the thousands, it just, at this point, I really have a bourbon barrel business. And the maple syrup just helps. Like, I think about it totally different. I never thought of the barrel as the problem. I always thought the barrel, a lot of people were trying to like cut up wood, like put syrup in chips. I've seen all sorts of goofy things, right? And I looked at it the opposite. I always had more sales for barrels than I could make syrup. It's almost become a commodity because the barrels are actually the key. So in the end, if you see the barrel as the problem, and you're looking for shortcuts, either dumping bourbon in it or, using a rye whiskey barrel because it's the same. It's not by law or even flavor profile. And I know most people can probably taste a rye whiskey and a bourbon and say it tastes very similar. And it does. They're both whiskeys. But I use bourbon barrels to make bourbon barrel aged maple syrup. And do you know how many people have tried to sell me rye whiskey barrels and just, hey, no one's going to be able to tell? It's like, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And they're cheaper, they're readily available, but it's still not a bourbon barrel. And I wouldn't cross it. Like, do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, our bourbon barrels, and you sell them too, are like sought after. So we actually, I think,
the barrels are worth more. Once you put maple syrup in them, they're worth more. And I think that was something that people couldn't figure out. Like, the barrels were worth more once maple syrup was in them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we could take a bourbon barrel and put maple in it, and like you said, have an upcharge, right? And then we just eliminate that problem. Like when we first started, bourbon barrels were $150 or whatever, and we had to eat that cost. Now people are seeking them out, and we're shipping these things all over the country and
all over the world.
Yeah, either we make $0, we wipe out our bourbon barrel costs, or we're profitable on them. So the more we do, the more profitable we are, and it's just those relationships that have helped. And it's not easy to build those, and it takes years, but at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't you try to do that?
Yeah, there reaches a point where the more volume of barrels you do, it actually becomes better instead of trying to do one or two, because you got to eat the cost. Because if people come and want to buy one maple barrel, like, we don't have time for it. I need to sell maple barrels by the semi-truckload or the shipping container. So if you just make one or two barrels, well, you're better off having a partnership with another distillery or brewery where you're just trading, and then they make something out of it. So your cost is zero. But it's just something I've noticed over the last 10 years. But Greg had a question here. You see this, whose bourbon is better? Are you asking about the spirit itself, or are you asking about like maple syrup? Because the answer is yes. If you're putting it in a bourbon barrel,
yes, it is. Yeah.
A barrel makes a difference. That's basically the gist. But yeah, if anybody that's watching, we got 18 people watching. If you got a question for Peter, Greg's, he clarified maple syrup. I've tried a lot of different ones. People are always trying to test my taster. We actually worked with Ohio State University to develop a test that would tell us whether maple syrup was actually in an oak barrel, because I wanted to get them. I was like, let's make a scientific test. And like, I had the weapon, right? I had the nuke, but I didn't detonate it because I'm like, this isn't going to help anybody. So we can run around and call everyone liars, but I'm like, that's just going to hurt it. So instead, we just tuck that away. I know who's not really using oak barrels because I had the scientist who's got the PhD, and he has a laser that he can shoot into the maple syrup that'll tell you whether it was in oak. And I'm like, I did this years ago because I was like, how do I build a hedge around actually doing it legit? And basically a giant tattletale and run around and embarrass people. But I'm like, what are you going to gain? Like, in the end, you're just going to hurt the industry. Greedy people are going to be greedy. I know who's greedy because I saw the data. But what good would it do to call those people out? Instead, I'm trying to encourage people to do it the right way instead of trying to punish or damage people's credibility. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, why, what good would it do? I don't know. But yeah, we developed a test to see if maple syrup had actually been in an oak barrel. But in the end, it would have just done more harm than good. So instead of trying a negative scare tactic, I'm just like, hey, if you can't get barrels, I'll get you barrels. Like, if you can't get bourbon barrels, like, I'll help you. If you can't get barrels, I'll just make barrel-aged syrup for you. I'd rather keep the category, the quality up by encouraging as opposed to disparaging or discouraging. if that makes sense.
And that's what a lot of people I don't think see is like, if you add just bourbon to it, like you're kind of ruining the industry. Like the consumer looks at that and says, like, if I try to sell them our syrup, they look at it and they're like, well, I've had that before. I don't like it. And that's what really bothers you is like, well, try ours or try, Nate's or try somebody else's that actually ages it properly. And you might like it. And usually probably 98% of the time, they love it more because it's actually barrel aged. And when you do cut those corners, it kind of sucks for the whole industry. I mean, it ruins it.
But as an industry, I remember seeing the article, or I think it was the University of Vermont did a study on just bought a bunch of syrup online. It was like half the syrup they bought wasn't even the right grade. So if we tried to, as an industry, help people make bourbon barrel aged maple syrup right, we got a bigger problem. We can't even make syrup and put it in the bottles right. Like, we're not going to get people to even listen to the barrel aged. We sound like Jim Carrey in the most annoying sound in the world. I think it was in Dumb and Dumber, where you sound like no one. It's just falling off deaf ears because regulators, they're worried about somebody having shellfish that shouldn't. These guys are trying to inspect peanut butter plants, and they're doing things that are life-threatening, whether the maple syrup is 51 TC or 49 TC. When you call a regulator about something like that, and they just got a call about a child that went into anaphylactic shock because they had peanuts, like, which one? You sound like the most annoying sound in the world. Like, really? Like, that's what you're worried about? And sometimes we're worried about the wrong things because we're not looking at it from 50,000 feet. Maple syrup being the wrong color in a bottle isn't life-threatening. And these regulators, these state, Department of Ags, they got to do things that are like, somebody's selling shellfish in an area, and ignorance, like, it can be not even on purpose, like fraudulent. I mean, I've seen things like fraudulent things, or people were buying, it was a fish that was being sold as walleye, but it was called Xander. This happened. It was actually a news story in Minnesota that happened. And it was that somebody found an expose, and these food companies were selling, it looks like walleye, tastes like walleye. It's walleye. It's in the walleye family. Well, somebody did a DNA test on it, and they found out it was Xander, which is a European fish.
Yeah.
Being shipped over really cheap. And it came down to, it was this simple. Salesman went into the kitchen, said exactly what I said to the chef. The chef's like, make $2 to $3 more per plate. Sounds good. They just trusted. And that was like legit fraud. But life-threatening things, fraudulent things, like these regulators, like maple. Do you know how many people have died from maple syrup? Zero. So, like, our arguments, you're putting maple syrup in a bourbon barrel and that's now commercial. Okay. Like, yeah, they pay us twice as much. Like, we're not lying. We're not like trying to disguise an off flavor. We're actually telling them. I think the argument's whether it's pure. Well, as soon as maple syrup touches a pancake, then it's not pure. Right? Like, it's now adulterated with buckwheat. So, I mean, how much you want to split hairs? And I think the toughest thing is when we finally realize we're not the customer. We don't buy it. Our opinions don't matter. That is the toughest thing. We know everything there is to know about maple syrup. We make it. We love it. We know it so intimately. And once you get into the sales side and the commercial side, you realize what we think doesn't matter. And that is like hard because we have so many opinions on what syrup's good, and nobody cares. Nobody cares except the maple farmers. How many maple farmers buy syrup on a grocery store shelf? 0. Yet we have a lot of opinions on how it should be sold. And I was just having look, my mom's using my dad's account again. That's funny. We got a good question on recession. I'm certainly seeing it. We started seeing it with some sales on some products. Like, we're definitely seeing a recession as far as like some syrup sales. I mean, there's no doubt some of our best customers are slowing down. Some customers have less sales than normal. We're just fortunate. We're kind of in a growth mode, so that contraction won't look as bad to Bissell Maple Farm. But the overall industry, I imagine if we're seeing contractions, that, definitely going to see contractions.
For bourbon barrel syrup? Or
all syrup.
really? Okay.
Yeah, this is something that I've been trying to explain, that about a third of the syrup's packaged for retail, a third of it's in the ingredient market, a third of it's, this is just my business. I try to do a third, because I got caught with a lot of restaurant business during COVID, and it was like, ooh, you don't want it all in the restaurant sector.
Right.
So like food service, retail, which is what I call like grocery stores, the Wal-Marts, the, Sam's Clubs. And then, so a third. The ingredient market's huge. And usually what happens is when maple syrup goes up in price, that ingredient market will contract. And now you have a lot of excess syrup in the market. So what happens, when syrup's lower cost, you can go push maple. We were just talking about how Chick-fil-A, it's not real maple, but they have a maple bacon. Imagine if Chick-fil-A actually used maple in their maple bacon chicken sandwich, right? So those are the type of areas where we probably as an industry need to push a little bit more. That's headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you know how many people in Atlanta or in Georgia in general know that maple syrup's actually made from a maple tree up north?
Right.
Not many.
Not many.
You go tell them big farm boys down there, those hog raising farm boys, that they don't know what they're talking about. They were raised on sorghum and Aunt Jemima and log cabin. Like, they call that maple syrup. You should go ahead and correct them.
That kills me, Nate. And that, back to your, a few minutes ago when you were saying about how, we're maybe feel like sometimes we're in competition with each other. And I don't know, a farmer in Maple said to me once, he said, we're not in competition with each other. We're in competition with Aunt Jemima in log cabin, and it's been my experience that as an industry, we try to help each other out more than we compete with each other. Unless it's for trees in our own neighborhood, there's some competition, at least around by me. But otherwise, in the marketplace, I think, sometimes we feel like there's a limited or a finite amount of customers, and there's not. There is so much opportunity. This, you're one of the biggest maple sellers in the United States, but there is so much opportunity to sell our product and educate the consumer and tell the story about maple. We're just at the tip of the iceberg as far as the marketplace, for our product. It can only grow from here, in my opinion. I'm very bullish, very optimistic about the future of maple. I think the possibilities are endless, and what you guys are doing with bourbon barrel syrup, and the other innovations. I mean, that's the future. It's the value added that I see where the growth is really taking off. And you must be experiencing this, right? But just all the people that are doing maple coated nuts and the infused maple and the bourbon barrels and the candy, of course, and the cream and all the other kind of innovations where we add value to maple. That's the future, isn't it? I mean, that's what's really taking off, and that's where the growth is probably going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, the barrel-aged maple syrup customer does not take a maple syrup customer. It brings a new person to the industry.
Yeah, they get some.
We're just getting started, right? It's still it will always be a smaller category than the regular maple syrup. But I've noticed it. I've never been like, this person likes maple syrup and they switched to bourbon barrel. No. Like, I know for me, I would rather have a good medium, right? I'm not out there like, I only have barrel-aged syrup. Like, no, my customers like it. Again, my opinion doesn't matter. Let's just sell them what they want, right? Like, sell them what they want. So I like Amber Ridge, a dark robust. I really like a good rum barrel-aged maple syrup because it's freaking hard to make, but no one cares. Like, no one wants it. Like, the industry doesn't want it, Bourbon is really pungent. It shows up. Rum's mild, so you got to use a lighter syrup and try finding a good rum barrel. That's a freaking, I've been down that road. And then when I found them and I made a bunch of it, everybody's like, nah, we just like bourbon. So for me, my opinion doesn't matter. Let's just give the customers what they want. So I think like if a Taylor Swift started putting sparkle syrup on the shelves, it would sell. Like it would. So, our opinion doesn't matter. I don't want sparkle syrup. Nobody cares. You're not buying it. That's it. Like, I think Taylor Swift would sell sparkle maple syrup. Just guessing a little bit.
Probably right.
Just guessing. Like on her way, like she could change the price of syrup. Like that would it. That the excess would be wiped out. It's like I don't go to Taylor Swift concerts. Like I don't. It's not my musical choice, but I imagine the people that do, they probably, how many have maple syrup in the refrigerator? Not all of them. And if Taylor Swift's like, hey, Swifty syrup, it's a new thing. Like that's my dream. Like, how do I get Taylor Swift to sell maple syrup? Taylor, if you're watching, I know you check in every now and then, but if you're watching, Swifty syrup, I got you.
Nice.
What else we got here?
How long are you letting your bourbon barrel, or how long are you letting syrup sit in the barrel? So it's funny. Just yesterday, I was on a tour in Massachusetts. It was a Sugar House tour, and they had a picnic after. It was the Massachusetts Maple Producers Association summer picnic. So it was fun. And one of the guys we stopped at had bourbon, one barrel. He had a 10-gallon barrel sitting on a rack, and it was cool because he had it on a rack like this, and then he had casters on it. So you can just easily spin it. And so I thought that was pretty clever. And then, but I asked him how long he's letting it soak. And I've heard many different variations, but he said 10 months. And I was like, that seemed long to me, but I tasted some of his and it was unbelievably good. And then there was another fellow there that was also doing bourbon barrel, and he said 6 months. I don't know what the secret recipe is, and you guys are certainly the pros, but I've heard some people say they just let it soak for 30 days and it works. I don't know what the rule is, but I
figured it out by screwing up. Like I screwed up so much. I mean, there was only 3 people doing it when I started doing it. And what happens is when you get into it, you go looking for the small barrels, right? Because you're a small producer, you don't make a lot of syrup. So you start looking for these small barrels and you find the 5s and the 8s. And up in Minnesota, there was a lot of Black Swan barrels, which were great because they had these holes. They were terrible whiskey barrels. Terrible. Nobody they were pungent, but they were awesome for maple syrup because they actually had a honeycomb on the inside. So they would drill holes in the oak, which is just hold more, right? What would happen is as you grow, trying to find those 5, 10, 15, 25-gallon barrels gets harder and harder. And I saw the problem early on. So I realized I just did the math. And there was 4.3 square inches of surface area per gallon in a 25-gallon barrel. And I felt the 25-gallon barrel was the best flavor. Like the 10s, just about burn your eyes a little bit, a little strong, you put it on your pancake and your eyes are watering. I felt that those were like a little boozy for me. I mean, when you buy barrel-aged maple syrup, you want to taste the bourbon. I get that. But what I started doing is I'd go, okay, if I take 2 10s and a 53, it tasted, and I did the math, and I said, okay, it's the same as the 25. So I figured out time doesn't matter. And I'm just, as a scientist and a chemist, I'll tell you, maple syrup's not going in and out of the oak. 12 pounds or 11 pounds per gallon is not moving in and out of oak. We like the bourbon story. We like the age story. So my customers say, how long do you age it? And I go, how long do you want me to age it? Because it takes me about 48 hours to make the flavor. 72, yeah, you might pick up a little bit, but nobody likes that story, right? That's not marketable. So I tell people, I will leave it in the barrel as long as you like, because it doesn't freaking matter.
Yeah.
I have proven it. It's not even like, I'm sure what is it? Cognitive dissonance. Like there's people right now, they're like, oh, like they're just like, that's not true. Like, yeah, it's true. Like this is what I did for a career. Like my job was to make paint stick to metal and architectural finishes. And you got really good at cleaning the surface of things. So I got really good at cleaning the surface of a barrel of maple syrup. Freaking really good at it. And it was because I learned from some old gray-haired guys that really knew how to make sure when you buy that red metal roof or that green metal roof, that 40-year warranty mattered. So I took all of the principles, and you can connect the dots looking backwards. If I did not do what I did for a career, I never would have known these things. Like I never would have, like it's just a small segment in an industrial business that ended up somehow correlating to this. And what we've done is we know how to make the flavor. The time is for the story. So I have customers that want it for 100 days. I got customers that want it for 6 months. I don't care because it doesn't matter. It's just, it doesn't. So it goes in hot. When you change the oil in your car, do you use cold, you get oil in your hands and your lawnmower, whatever. Do you use cold water to clean your hands off? Or do you use hot water? Use hot water, right? So the time doesn't matter. And when you heat up syrup, it expands by 10%, right? So if it expands by 10%, you got it in there hot. What happens when it cools down? It shrinks. And when it shrinks, you create a vacuum. If you create a vacuum in oak, you'll pull in the flavor. So plus barrels are a perishable item like strawberries, bananas. It's just like a fruit. The day they're dumped, they continuously degrade. So they're not the same day one as they are day 3 or 4. They're not the same in hour 1 as they are in hour 4. They are a perishable item, and we quickly learn that. At about 3 months, barrels will start leaking. So
yeah, I was just going to say that.
Like I don't like leaving syrup in a barrel for 3 months. But then it becomes the argument, well, is it really aged? Well, it's to say, well, the vaccine is not really a vaccine. Like you can get into semantics, right? But I think we all understand the idea. Bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, it's a category, but we'll leave it in barrels however long somebody wants it, because the story is more important sometimes. Because we like that bourbon story, right? It's a American white oak used once thanks to the Kentucky, the Cooper's Guild. They made it by law, one-time use. It's genius, guaranteed sales. Well, the flavor of a bourbon barrel has got a lot more vanillins, tannins. You can't use it over and over. I mean, this is like people that say they use barrels over and over, run. They're a fraud. They're lying. You can't even use one 53-gallon barrel. So I use 3 to make one. That's my secret. Nobody wants to work that hard though, Peter. So I used to keep it a secret, and now I realize like no one wants to work that hard. You get 3 times. We got 3 times the barrels. Like it's a lot more work.
Yeah, we'll do a lot of blending too. Like we give customers a sample of like, do you want it strong? Do you want it weak? And we have some customers that want it, 1 month aged. We have some that want it 6 months, and or somebody in the middle. So we'll blend, a 6 month and a 30-day or 15-day together to get the desired taste. So we kind of know like what each flavor profile the customer wants, and we just try to hit that. So we do have some that are aged like 6 to 9 months, some longer. If we can't sell it, it just sits there. They do leak, but then we'll blend it with some other product that's less aged to meet the flavor that they're looking for.
So when I was at this guy's place in Massachusetts yesterday, he was soaking his barrels pretty regularly. That's why he had it on. So like I said, he had it on a rack like this. The barrel sat in there, but there was casters, and he was spinning it occasionally and then watering, keeping the wood wet on the out, so it stayed tight, which is what you're supposed to do with barrels. You guys do that, and that I guess he's
waste of friggin' time. If you believe time matters, then you know that barrels will leak. So you start like there's only 4 ways you can make a decision. I learned this from a surgeon. You make the right decision for the right reason, right decision for the wrong reason, wrong decision for the wrong reason, and wrong decision for the right reason. That's it. That's the only 4 ways you can make a decision. That's it. I don't care if you're buying a vehicle. So surgeons, I mean, they teach this in medical school. So somebody is making the wrong decision for the right reason. Like you're watering a barrel. Like, why? Well, it's because it leaks. Well, why the frick's it leak? Because I got to age it. No, you freaking don't.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe he doesn't need to let it soak so long where he's having leak problems. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, like if you buy old barrels from a barrel broker, like barrel brokers, the problem with barrel brokers is they buy a semi-load. And if you get there early, when the door's open, you're good. But by month 3, those barrels at the end of the truck aren't any good.
Interesting.
So the quality of the barrel is more important than anything.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we're making the wrong decision for the right reason. We don't want it to leak. Like, why are you buying crappy barrels? Start with that one.
Right.
Well, it's all I could get. Okay, well, stop. Like, why'd you quit looking for good barrels? I can't find good barrels. I can't find good help. But why are we throwing, like, that's your problem. Like, you got to work harder.
Yeah.
Don't take vacation for 6 years. You'll find barrels.
Yeah, I think the relationship is the biggest thing. It's like we have probably 12 or 15 distilleries we work with, and some of these distilleries are dumping thousands well, maybe not at a time, but over a month, they're dumping thousands of barrels.
Wow.
We can just call them up and be like, hey, we need 36 barrels or whatever, and they're here the next day. You know, we have a driver in Kentucky that hauls them up kind of the next day type of thing, and I mean, the amount of barrels dumped in Kentucky is unbelievable. And if you can't find good barrels, then I think most people need to work on their relationships and not just buy something off of Facebook Marketplace.
Well, they need to call you, right, Kevin? I mean, you're still?
Yeah, they can. I mean, I'll sell them one. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, the assumption is that we wouldn't. Why? It's that zero-sum fallacy again. You know, this is one thing I learned, like, from guys like Bruce Bascom early on. It's like, I wasn't sure why a guy like that would want to help me. Maybe he wants my customers. And then I realized he doesn't want my customers. I am so thankful for how patient that man was with me, because I was an idiot.
Yeah, I think a couple months ago, I think I couldn't get barrels for whatever reason. And I called up Bissell Maple Farm, and they had Heaven Hill barrels here, I think the next day or two. It's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. Were you worried that I was going to steal your customers?
Yeah, no, I wasn't worried about that one bit.
Where's that going, Kevin? I want to know.
Exactly, right? No, it's we had
the people who think that way, that's zero-sum fallacy.
Yeah, we had a local distillery here. I mean, they use all 25s, and he dropped off a dozen barrels last week. And there's a guy, one of my, I guess, competitors. He's 2 miles up the road. He came and bought a barrel from me. Yeah, I marked it up like 10 or 15 bucks or whatever, but he bought a barrel from me, and he sells bourbon barrel syrup 2 or 3 miles up the road. Like, I don't care.
I think early on, people were like, Nate, so-and-so's making, they wanted to see my reaction. Like, so-and-so's making barrel-aged syrup. Sweet. Like, why would I be, like, why? Like, everybody's like, someone's stealing someone's idea. First of all, there's no rules in business. Like, there's no rules that if you come up with something that I can't do it, somebody might get irritated or upset, but why, there's no rules it's infinite. There's rules you don't even know exist. There's people that you don't even, it's an infinite game. So there's no rules that are agreed upon in business. Like, somebody comes up with an idea, like the idea that you have something, my precious, that somebody can't, like, where do humans come up with the idea that they can just somehow hold something and then just be mad at somebody because I came up with that.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a perfect question. Somebody asked about marketing maple as a natural sweetener rather than pancake and syrup topper or whatever, pancake topper. And that's a perfect example. Like, Nate makes sugar. You have a huge sugar operation right now. And I actually have been working on these sugar bags for the past 6 months. We had made and released last week. And I actually bought sugar from Nate to put in those bags to market as a natural sweetener. Like, why would I go through
cool. You did a good job with those bags.
Yeah, thank you. Why would I go through the process of making sugar when somebody like Bissell Maple Farm can make it on a big scale and we can just distribute it in smaller packages? Because I don't think Nate wants to deal with 1 pound or 8-ounce sugar shakers to the retail customer. So now we're doing that. Yes, it might be with his sugar, but who cares? We all win.
The only person that cares about where syrup comes from and whose sugar it is, and the only person that cares about that crap is farmers. Customers don't care. Like, I straight tell them, like, is this your syrup? No. You know why? Because I got customers that buy more maple syrup than any one farmer in the world makes. What am I going to do? Like, I just would rather partner with farmers. In fact, if you're a purchasing agent and you hear somebody that says, yeah, I had a bad season, going to be short for you. Or you hear Nate walks in and goes, yeah, I buy from like 200 families. Like, I need them. They need me. It's a good partnership. Which one is the purchasing agent going to go with? Is he going to go with the guy that, well, that's not Nate syrup? That purchasing agent will be like, I know. Like, we don't buy it. Our opinions don't matter. And it's funny in the maple industry, there's so many farmers that are buying from other farmers. And it's like, psst, I need some drums. Don't tell anybody. Why? Nobody gives a crap. You do. Your customers don't. You think they do. But what you realize is you go further and further in the game, they care that you have the relationships to buy the syrup. So everybody's keeping what they buy a secret, right? I buy 30 drums. You want to know how to be successful in the maple business? Don't make syrup. Don't. Because there's so many people making it that are way better than you. Buy a canner. If somebody said I want to get into the maple business right now, I'd say, buy a canner. You would kill everybody. Just start there. Buy a canner. That's all you need. Get some drums. Go build $1 million in business. And what are the farmers going to say? You know that's not his syrup? And the purchasing agents be like, yep. That's why I buy from him, because he has 35 farmers. And if there's a bad season over here, I don't have to worry about it. And I feel bad. There's a farm up in Michigan. I'm at this farmer's market, and they're telling me that, yeah, the farmer told me it was a bad season. I'm thinking to myself, why would you ever tell a customer, oh, I can't supply it, it's a bad season? They think that's an acceptable excuse. Do you know how much business comes my way because a farmer, I don't want it, but it's because a farmer will say, I had a bad maple season. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. Why would you ever tell a customer that? You know what you should say is, I had a bad season, but luckily I have a neighbor that's going to help me with my syrup supply.
Nice.
You know what that purchasing agent's going to say? Cool. They're not going to say, wait a minute. Are you saying that's not your syrup? Nobody cares. Only the farmers care. It's the truth. And anyone who's still keeping it a secret, hush, hush, like, why? Like, why are you keeping it? No one cares. You do. But you don't buy your own product. That's like marketing. Like, listen, this is me like learning over time, not like I somehow helicoptered here. It's from me getting my butt kicked a lot is what it is.
Well, that's it too. Like in Ohio, we had a terrible season, or some people had a terrible season this past year. There's a local place that buys a decent amount of syrup for a local market or whatever, and their supplier boiled one time. And he said that he can't supply that local market this year. And I asked him if he wanted me to sell him a couple drums. And he said no. So the local market called us. And now we are packing their syrup until next year when he can make it again. It's like it was such a waste of money for him and waste of sales that now he's like not reliable. It's crazy that somebody would do that.
Yeah.
They take off.
That corn farmer that I was hanging out with, and he bought somebody's sweet corn business. And we were talking about how he bought it, but he didn't know anything about the sweet corn business. I'm like, good, you're not ruined yet. It's kind of like when I hire people at this point, I don't want somebody that worked 90% of what we deal with now is when we hire somebody, they worked in a bad culture. So they either had poor leadership, a poor manager, and we spend all of our time helping them get rid of the defense mechanisms that they have from working in an unhealthy culture. That is the number one thing that we deal with at Bissell Maple Farm. It's about culture development. People can't believe that if you started and you mess up, that's okay, because they got screamed at the last place. So if you get screamed at the last place, you spend all your time either denying you messed up, which if you deny you messed up, you're never going to grow, hiding that you mess up, which is even worse. So culture development, like if Bissell Maple Farm has any strength, it's people and people development. And I would say, sadly, I'd say 90% of the companies out there are ruining people. So Jess Bailey runs Bissell Maple Farm. Jess Bailey was a stay-at-home mom that had a daycare center in her house. It was about caring for people. She's not ruined yet. She didn't go work in corporate America and learn how to stab people in the back. So the culture is basically built by people who haven't been ruined yet. People who've seen it, like I worked in corporate America enough to know, oh, I see the game. So if you don't want to work hard, don't work in a small business. If you don't like politics, don't work in a large corporation. That's your choice. So now it's all about culture. And that's why we're tough. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has to do with everybody's got everybody's back. Like Bissell Maple Farm's culture, like that will that will eat strategy for lunch. Culture will always eat strategy. I don't care how good of a strategy you have. If people will die for another person next to them, how do you win? Like it's an infinite game. We're just going to keep staying in the game forever. And I got their back. They got my back. It's all about culture. So I don't know how we got on that subject. It's interesting.
How many employees do you have now, Nate?
About 20.
Nice. And I'm
About
sure.
20.
Yep. And you're keeping them happy. And
well, now it's
success.
You're not a leader till you create other leaders. So it's just, you know why I got to take a vacation for the first time in 6 years is because you have to give up to go up. So I finally was able to let go. They had to pry my hands off of it. And then you find out you're really not good at the things you think you are. Like that's eye-opening. Like as a business owner, you're only one of three types of business owner. You're either a technician, you're good at the thing. You're a manager, you're good with people, or you are a pure entrepreneur, which means you see opportunity everywhere. You are only one of three. Of course, we all think we're all three. Nope. Everybody thinks they're all three. Like I realized I'm not a technician. Zach, our production manager, his first day, he didn't even know how to do syrup. This guy's smoking me. And I went home. I said, honey, either I was never that good or I'm getting old or both. Because I realized it was the first time I met somebody that it was like breathing. You know, I just had I didn't want to quit. Like I just had grit. And then you find people that are good with people, like Jess, like everything's through how can I help my team? It's about people. It's about relationships. It's communicate. And then my problem as a pure entrepreneur is I can start 75 businesses. I can't run them or finish anything. So like ideas are not the problem. There's a lot of idea people out there that don't do anything. So I had to find the technician and then I had to find the manager. I do what I'm good at. They do what they're good at. And that is in a book called The E-Myth, which every business owner should read because you should know which one you are. You're one of three. So, you know, I thought since I was a chemist and I knew technical things that I was a technician. No, I have a little bit of it. I'm a leader. I'm not a manager because I have one rule as a manager. Don't be stupid. The problem is we all break that rule. So, yeah, it's funny. I can talk about all these mistakes for hours.
It's good stuff.
I appreciate it, guys. We ran 10:23, so it's about an hour. I appreciate it, Peter. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Kevin's the reason this happened. He was like, Nate, you gonna do a live stream? I was like, yeah, it's a good idea. So try to do it every Sunday night. That's the goal.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey,
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it.